Hello, I'm Billy Hoffman from Rigor. On this edition of Web Perfectionist, we're going to take a look at analyzing performance using a visual record. Now, if you've done anything with web performance or availability, chances are you've seen this graph before. What we're doing is we're seeing a trend graph that's showing us how key performance indicators like time to first byte, visually complete, or start render have changed over time. And ideally what you want are these lines to be going down and to the right. That means that your site is getting faster over time. These metrics are getting better, hopefully because of optimizations that you're making, and the user is ultimately having a better experience. But of course, if you've looked at these graphs before, you also know that you end up with spikes. Like here's this spike on Vogue. Now, usually Vogue, visually complete is usually anywhere from about 6.5 seconds to about 7 or 8.5 seconds. Pretty consistent. But here we can see a spike. And so it's our job to figure out, well, what is this spike from? Is it just a random networking blip that never happens again? Is it a piece of third-party content that ended up messing up my key performance indicators? Is it a mistake we made when we rolled out a new version of our site? You have to figure out what's the cause of this spike. And a visual record really helps you do that much more quickly and communicate it inside the organization. So what do I mean by visual record? I mean, let's actually collect and save what the browser was doing when it was trying to load the page. That actually will tell you what the user was experiencing and help you figure out what actually was the impact of those changes in your KPI. Now, in this case for Vogue, we can see that the onload time got pushed out to 36 seconds, which is ridiculous. And we can see the visually complete, same thing. It's about 4x what it normally is. Now, let's actually see what's going on. Now, this is what Vogue looks like right now. And Vogue has, in the top right corner, an image of the current issue, and then this little red subscribe box. And when you mouse over it, it does this little pop-down call to action. Now, this pop-down doesn't happen until after window.onload and the JavaScript event gets hooked up. So until that happens, this call to action isn't working. Now, we can actually use the visual record to see what was going on. We can see that at 1.1 seconds into the page, it already starts drawing that red box. This is so important they start drawing it almost immediately. And then we can see some content comes in, and then they go ahead and actually here we see at 4 seconds, they've got an image of the issue and the red box. But then weird stuff starts happening. So we can see that now we have some sort of collision where they're on top of each other. At 6.5 seconds, they absolutely disappear. And it's a whole second before something pops back, and it's just the image of the issue. And then it's a full 35 seconds before we actually get the red box back and the image is gone. And then finally, everything appears and the call to action is working. That is not a great experience. And we have the visual record capturing it, showing us what was happening so that we know that this metric wasn't a false positive. Now, what actually was happening? Well, let's scroll down to the waterfall and we can see that there's this 1.4 meg GIF image. It's the 7th thing requested, and it took a very long time for the server to start responding to that request and actually delivering the data. And that's what actually pushed our onload time out to 36 seconds. So what was this image that was so important that apparently it's okay to push everything out? It's this picture of Cindy Crawford from the 80s laughing at you for your poor web performance. So this is crazy. So what is this picture from? Like, I did not make this up. This is literally what Vogue gave us. Well, it's actually one of these little images down here. So these are the little story tease images. And so they actually included a little image that was this animated GIF. Now, what does the visual record tells us? The visual record tells us that this is actually adding insult to injury, because you'll notice there is no image of Cindy Crawford above the fold laughing at you, right? Nothing's happening. So that's below the fold content. Yet it's the 7th request. It blocked everything and prevented window.onload from firing. And in fact, the visual record also shows us that it impacted the call to action. So we had essentially for a huge swath of time, nothing there and nothing functioning. Finally, you can use the visual record to communicate to maybe the less technical members of your team or audience what was going on. In this case, we have a video of everything that was loading, and they can see we're now at 7 seconds. For the next 30 seconds, the fact that nothing is here and nothing is functioning, even though the user is looking at almost a nearly complete above the fold content. So, in conclusion, use a tool that gives you a visual record. Whether it's a commercial tool like Rigor or an open source tool like Web Page Test, having a film strip or a video that shows you exactly what the user was experiencing when you detected an anomalous reading, something that was beyond the norm, makes it so much easier to not only understand, is this a legit issue, but to understand what its impact was and what the user saw, and make it a lot easier to figure out what was going on and how to make your site faster in the future.